Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica. I am an education manager for Davies Locker and Newport Landing Whale Watching in Newport Beach, California. And I am here today to bring you all kinds of fun marine life facts, information about whales, and to talk a little bit more about why our marine protected area is so important. So let's get started. We're going to be bringing you everything from humpback whales to hermit crabs in partnership with Crystal Cove Conservancy, which we'll hear from in just a little bit about their tide pools off of Crystal Cove State Park. But we'll start off with one of my favorite animals, the humpback whale. Can you imagine seeing this off of a whale watching boat just feet from where you are? These animals can be over 50 feet long and weigh close to 70,000 pounds when they're fully grown, splashing down, making such a big sound, big waves. These guys are incredible. Now, humpback whales we can see throughout the year in Newport Beach, and we're very lucky to have such a pristine ecosystem just outside the Newport Beach harbor because of the marine protected area that is there. And it really does help to keep a lot of these oceans nearby pristine. Now, whales are some of the most amazing ocean animals. Of course, I'm biased, but how beautiful is this fin whale? Now, this video was taken just off of one of our boats. The second largest animal on the planet is our big fin whale here. They are amazing animals. I mean, look at the diversity, all shapes and sizes and colors that we have in the whales of the world, which is what this drawing is showing you. Now, the ocean covers over 70% of planet Earth, and there's a lot of habitat for these animals to live and thrive and grow big. In fact, our blue whale, which is the whale at the very top of the page here, can stretch to be over 100 feet long. Wow. Now, there's one thing on this drawing that is not a whale. Let's see if you can find it. If you are having trouble, I'll circle it. She's right here. This is our scuba diver. And our scuba diver is drawn here with the whales to show you how big these animals get, just in case you can't visualize 100 feet. The blue whale, again, is the largest animal on the planet, larger than any dinosaur that has ever lived, larger than any megalodon. It is the biggest, and it's still alive, swimming around out here and thriving in our oceans. If you're still having trouble trying to figure out, 100 feet, I really don't get 100 feet, but if I were to put something in comparison like a school bus, it's much larger than that. It's actually the size of 3 school buses. If you've ever taken one back and forth to school, you can kind of visualize. If I take 3 of them and park them together, that's the size of our big blue whale. So whales are just incredible. Now, here off the coast of Newport Beach, and actually all along the Pacific coast here, from Alaska down to Mexico, there's lots of different types of whales. So although there are 90 different species of whales in the world, we can see anywhere between 12 to 15 whales off of our coast in Southern California, some of them including the bottlenose dolphin. We have our common dolphins off California. Here in Newport Beach, we can see Risso's dolphin and Pacific white-sided dolphins. Really cool, guys. And then, of course, all of our baleen whales, blue whales, fin whales, sei whale, Brutus whale, humpback whale, gray whale, and our minke whale. So all of these animals can be seen in Southern California. We're lucky to have whale watching year-round. So it's not just the gray whale season, which most people think only spring is when they can actually see whales, but actually throughout the year, these whales have an overlapping kind of migration or season that they're in the area. So we're very lucky to see them all year round. And I'd love to show you what this looks like because we can see gray whales right now, which are cruising down the coast, navigating the coastal environment on their migrations. Amazing. beautiful animals that we see. And this is all filmed right off of Crystal Cove State Park in what we call the Marine Protected Area. So there's over 3 miles of beach and coastline and backcountry hiking that makes up this state park here in Newport Coast, which again is called Crystal Cove State Park. So if you've never been, definitely put it on your bucket list because it is a beautiful part of Southern California to visit. And just outside this land, just outside the beach, we have the water, the ocean, the coastline, the tide pools, and that extends out over a mile into the ocean. That is a protected zone from the coastline, which prohibits take of marine life and allows that area to be protected from overfishing. Now, I talk about marine protected areas. Here's kind of a visual of what that looks like. From the Newport Beach Harbor exit and entrance here along the jetty wall from Corona del Mar down to Abalone Point, which is where Laguna Beach starts, is all called a conservancy area. This is a little bit of a buffer between the restricted red zone marine protected area that is no take of any animals, no extractive activities are permitted. You can dive and swim in all of these areas, but a lot of the things that you do for fishing and recreational activities and then tide pooling is limited as far as what you can take from those areas, because we want to make sure we're moderating like hook and line fishing and aquaculture and things like that, so that we can help protect those areas of the coastline and keep them thriving and pristine for the animals that inhabit those areas. Now here's what these habitats look like. This was actually filmed off of one of our boats. We dropped the camera down to check it out. We have corals, we have fish, we have a rocky reef ecosystem. We even have harbor seals swimming. The coastal areas of Newport Beach into Laguna Beach are just stunning. And if we zone off these areas and say, hey, you can't take as many fish out of here, or maybe you can't take any of these fish. We have no take of lobsters sometimes. It's highly regulated in these marine protected zones, conservation areas, or these buffer zones like Crystal Cove State Park is, leading up into the area that's no take at all. So it helps kind of pad the area, make it just a little bit more of a protected zone where these fish can breed and reproduce. And the great thing is it's good all the way around, because if these fish are happy and healthy in this area, they're not being fished out of these locations, then they're just going to reproduce and swim outside of these invisible borders to help repopulate fish stocks in other areas that maybe aren't a marine protected area. So although they are closed down for fishing in most of those locations, it does help to repopulate areas that are not closed off for fishing. But we want to help keep these areas thriving for future generations. I want my grandkids to be able to snorkel around here and see stuff like this when they're my age. So it's important that we set these rules and these boundaries in the ocean to allow for more conservation practices. I wonder if any of you have ever been snorkeling in these areas and seen some of these fish. Now, for the animals that inhabit the marine protected areas, they're not only just fish, not only just sea lions and seals. We actually have dolphin and whales, like you saw already, just off the coast of Newport. And so they use these habitats. Whales like these guys, toothed whales, which are one half of the whales that we can see here in the world. So toothed whales will use this habitat. Baleen whales will use this habitat. It's really important for a healthy ecosystem. So like I was mentioning here, so we have 2 separate categories of whales. So when we talked about all the whales that live in the world. Well, scientists then further break these whales apart into two groups. So all the whales that have teeth in their mouth are listed here. So there's a wide variation of what they look like and where they're going to live in the world. And then we also have all the big whales that most people think of when you hear whale. You see a large whale, and all these whales are actually categorized as baleen whales because they have something called baleen in their mouth. And baleen, what is that? Well, that's actually in reference to their teeth. Their teeth are actually hairy. They're made up of the same thing as your fingernails and hair, and it's made up of keratin. And so if it breaks, it grows again. They don't need to worry about it. They always got these hairy teeth growing down like a giant mustache in their mouth, which they use to filter the water. So these animals have these rows of baleen plates that continuously hang down. One side is nice and flat and straight, like you see here, and the other side is super hairy on the inside of their mouth, which allows these whales to trap small organisms that are in the water. They'll open their mouth, fill it with water, shut that mouth, and then they will squish the water out through the baleen. So the water goes in and out of that hairy teeth. And what gets stuck against the mouth is going to be their food. So here I am up in Alaska. I'm holding a piece of baleen from a whale. Whoa, it is large. This baleen is the largest baleen on the planet. But it does not come from our big blue whale. It actually comes from a bowhead whale. Bowhead whales have a really big mouth, and this baleen can stretch over 12 feet long. And this is what a bowhead whale looks like. Very interesting looking animals. They have a big giant head, and their baleen hangs down just from the top jaw of the mouth. Now, compared to an elephant, you can see here, he's much, much larger than the elephant, or a human for that matter. And these guys will just kind of skim the surface. They'll take their mouths here and just skim the surface, and they will shut their mouths, squish the water out, and eat all the little critters that are floating around in the ocean. And they'll use their big giant heads to crack through the ice. The ice sheets cover their environment. So these guys don't live down here in Southern California. You can only really encounter these guys up in the Arctic Circle. So you have to look really carefully for these guys because they like to hide underneath the ice sheets. And then when they do need to take a breath of air, they smash through the ice with their head to take a breath. So we learned a little bit about baleen whales. We learned that their teeth are hairy and that they filter the water. So what do they eat? Well, some baleen whales eat plankton. Most will eat small schooling fish. And these two foods make up a majority of their diet. So what are plankton? Think about that. Maybe you've heard that word before. Now, plankton are drifters. Drifters. They're usually microscopic organisms because if you're drifting around, you might be too small to swim against the current. Once maybe you grow a bit bigger, then you can swim against the current. Sometimes plankton will live their entire lives in this drifting state, and you're being pushed around by the ocean's currents, floating wherever the ocean wants to take you. And like I said, some plankton will live their whole lives in this state. This is as big as a krill gets, about the size of your pinky nail, and they will float around in the ocean, usually in big masses of other krill. They like to stick together for protection. This is what it looks like when you get thousands of them in one little spot. And this is what some of our big baleen whales are after. They want to eat that. Let's take a look. So we have our whale just under the surface. You could barely see him. There he is. Coming to the surface, feeding on either krill, plankton, something tiny that we can't even see. His mouth expands like a giant accordion. The throat balloons out, and he's going to take his big whale tongue and start to squish all the water out of his mouth and eat all the little krill that's stuck against the baleen. Beautiful animal. Again, this is a big fin whale, one of our largest whales, close to 60 to 70 feet long. And they'll do this all day long, feeding on small microscopic animals, but they'll get big mouthfuls full of thousands of these little critters in their mouth. using their baleen that hangs down to filter the water. Now, whales eat a lot. They need to eat up to 8,000 pounds of food a day to maintain their huge size. As you can see, this humpback whale is trying to chow down on some krill there. You can see them floating around in the water, and just the baleen hanging down from the top of the mouth, not the bottom. Here's another cool aerial view from our drone off of our boat of some humpback whales feeding on anchovy. And that's called lunge feeding. Here's what it looks like under the water if we were to look at this humpback whale eat. And so some of those plankton that they'll feed on will stay that size their whole lives, but other plankton, like these guys, might only spend a portion of their life in this floating, drifting environment that they're susceptible to everything eating them. When fish and crabs and snails have their babies, they're super small, like microscopic. This is what a baby crab looks like. Here we have a baby fish larva. We have a snail larva, and all of these guys will be floating around in the planktonic ecosystem, drifting with the currents until they finally get large enough to settle down onto the seafloor and grow, or to swim against the current like a fish and become a big adult. But eventually, because the currents are pushing these animals every which way, they will sometimes end up in tide pools. This is a tide pool in Crystal Cove, so sometimes they'll end up here. And that's why it's so important that we have really pristine tide pool environments for these animals to be protected in an area that they're not susceptible to predators like they would be out in the planktonic ecosystem. So when these animals get larger, like our sea stars and our crabs, then they will start to crawl around and start to be adults in these tide pool zones, which is why it's so important that we have marine protected areas or bodies of water, tide pool zones that are more restricted from taking animals, from fishing, from some recreational activities, to allow for these zones to be just natural and thriving without any human interaction. And having a perfect habitat like Crystal Cove State Park, which is a marine protected area with lots of tide pools for all this plankton to go, is great because eventually they will become adult marine life, which is what we want. So for you, it's extremely important to have good tide pool etiquette, which Caitlin will get into shortly, to not disturb any marine life when tide pooling, to not walk or crush on anything in the tide pools, and to just tread lightly when you're moving around in these areas because they are sensitive. Now, it is, again, extremely important to have these zones because it is not only protecting the coastline, the park areas, the tide pools, it's protecting all of the ocean body within a mile of the coastline, extending out into the ocean where these whales and these dolphins are moving around. They're thriving. They're looking for food to eat, and having a healthy ecosystem that has a healthy plankton supply will support feeding the small bait fish and support feeding our big whales and our dolphin. So it's all connected. So with our partners, Crystal Cove Conservancy, back in 2012, we decided we know that this is important to have on our coastline. We just heard news that the areas, those bodies of water outside of Newport Beach, were just now starting to become protected. And we said we need to make sure the public is aware of how important these areas are, not only for the animals, but also for us humans as we grow and we learn that taking things out of the ocean constantly is not always the best idea. So we partnered with Crystal Cove. We started to run marine protected area science cruises to teach children all about the importance of these areas. So let's listen in. Here in Newport Beach, having a marine protected area right in our backyard gives scientists a unique opportunity to assess the health of our local ecosystems. In 2012, Newport Landing and Crystal Cove Conservancy partnered together to create a program which allows students to become citizen scientists by collecting hands-on and meaningful data which will be used to measure the success of the marine protected area. Our field trips get students excited about science education by getting them out of the classroom and into nature to become scientists for the day. In small teams, they participate in research stations including plankton collection, water quality assessment, and digital fish surveys. The plankton student teams identify plankton species under our microscopes after sending trawling nets off the back of the boat to collect samples. Our water quality student teams use scientific equipment to collect water samples at different depths in the ocean to test water chemistry. And fish survey student teams use fishing poles to send GoPros underwater and into the kelp forest to record the presence or absence of key kelp forest fish. Students then analyze their data and communicate their findings with one another to get a broader understanding of the health of our local marine reserve. The best part is that all student data is used by local scientists to assess the overall health of the MPA in Crystal Cove State Park. Let's not forget about the marine mammals. Once their data is collected, we go whale watching on the open ocean to look for whales, dolphins, and sea lions, which we see year-round here in Newport Beach. There's no other program in Southern California like this that provides students with engaging, fun, and educational days on the water, utilizing students as the scientists. The feeling that they've contributed to the protection and conservation of their oceans is something they will remember for the rest of their lives and will help to make this world a better place. Amazing. And if you guys want to learn more about our marine protected area science cruises in partnership with Crystal Cove Conservancy, you can head on over to our website. And of course, you can ask us questions at the end of the chat. We're happy to send you some information on that as we are up and running field trips now with students on our boats with limited capacity. So back to our whales. We talked a lot about our marine protected areas, which we love, but let's learn a little bit more about the other type of whale that we see out here in Newport Beach. Besides our baleen whales, we have our toothed whales, which are some of my favorites. We have everything from the giant sperm whale, which is up at the top here, over 66 feet long, and feeds on colossal squid. We have our killer whale, or orca. We have our beluga whale, narwhal. We even have a pink dolphin here. So lots of diversity in our toothed whale species. Now, toothed whales have something very different in their mouths. They have sharp, pointed, conical teeth that they use to bite, rip, tear, swallow things. They don't chew anything up that they eat, and they don't filter like our baleen whales. Now, what these toothed whales are going to be eating, of course, is fish. All whales are carnivores. They're going to be eating meaty things in the ocean. But some of these toothed whales will actually eat larger animals like seals and elephant seals and even other whales. Yes. In fact, our killer whale is one that will feed upon other whales, which is why it gets its name, killer whale, or whale killer. But of course, not all whales are going to be feeding on other whales. Like our small dolphin, they have tiny mouths, which they use to feed on tiny fish. You can see our dolphin are working together here to herd lots of sardines in a tight ball. We call this a bait ball. And we do also see sea lions in the mix helping out the dolphin, chasing around the fish and feeding on those individual animals. We also have the birds, the seagulls in the shearwaters that have found this activity of life underneath them. So these birds are also going to want to feed on this school of fish. And so you see the dolphins working together, herding them, zipping in and out of that school of fish and biting and swallowing those fish whole. And this is one reason why, which we'll talk about a little later, why we use birds to help spot whales. Now here's what it looks like from an underwater perspective of a toothed whale feeding, which is very different than our baleen whales we just watched. They just bite and swallow those little anchovies they're eating whole. Dolphin, interestingly, actually have 3 stomachs. Some of them have more. And if they're in a large amount of food at once, they'll sometimes eat as much as they can, filling their stomach up like they're at a buffet. And then when the fish are all gone or they're tired, they will then start to move those fish into the second stomach, the third stomach to digest them, because they got bones to digest and muscle and meat and skin. They digest it all. Now, one thing that these whales have that is different than our baleen whales is that toothed whales have the ability to use echolocation for hunting. You've probably heard that word before. Echolocation means seeing using sound. So what these whales do is they have one hole that goes up to the surface for breathing, and the second nostril that they have is actually sitting right here in the melon, which is this bubbly forehead on the animal. The melon is filled with fat, and fat helps to transfer the sound, to move that sound a little bit farther in the water column. And they essentially just squeak, squeal, click, and whistle out of this little area in their head, just like a pair of lips squeezing together, making noises. They don't make those dolphin noises from their tongue or throat. It's all up here in their forehead. So the sounds beam out into the environment, bounce off of objects around them. They feel those vibrations from the sounds back in their face, and it vibrates their ear right here, and they can actually see. If their eyes were completely shut in a dark environment, they could see using the sound. This is really helpful when these dolphins are navigating in often very, very murky and turbulent environments. So the echolocation gives them a one-up on any other animal, because they can not only see with their eyes, they can hear because they do have ears, but they can also produce these clicks and have an extra advantage, making them a top ocean predator. So here's what it looks like. If these dolphins were to click and whistle from that area in their forehead, you can see there it's bouncing off of objects in front of them like this fish, and they're feeling those vibrations back in their bony lower jaw, which does transfer to the ear, stimulates the brain, and shows them a picture of their surroundings. Whoa. Now, bats have this ability. All of our toothed whales, so all these whales with teeth in their mouth, have this ability. And then, of course, we've kind of copied it because it's such a great adaptation. We've put it on our underwater submarines, and we use that. It's called sonar. So again, these marine protected areas are just so important for our marine life because it supports not only a protected area, but it helps keep the plankton thriving. The plankton thriving keeps our fish thriving. The fish thriving keeps our whales thriving. And then, of course, we're thriving as a result, because healthy oceans help make this planet a healthier place for everybody to live. Now, these are gray whales just cruising right past the coast of Crystal Cove State Park here in Newport, which we are seeing right now in the spring. So almost on a daily basis from January into May, we will see gray whales cruising along our coast, using the coastline for navigation, as they make one of the longest migrations on the planet of any mammal. They're going 12,000 miles round trip. Most of these whales are making it, and most will be using our coastline all the way up the coast. So we recommend getting on a boat to getting a really good look, but sometimes you can even go to a beach like Crystal Cove and just look out at the ocean, look for marine life, because you will see them out at sea, especially during this time of year. Any high bluff area like Crystal Cove State Park has is great too. Along the coast should also work to see some of these guys during this time of year. Just grab your binoculars and take a look. What you're looking for are these spouts, which are the breath from the whale shooting up into the sky. And that's a great indication that you are looking at a whale. Now, gray whales are close to 40 feet in length. They weigh over 70,000 pounds when they're fully grown. And actually, during this entire migration, they are fasting. They're not eating at all until they get back home to Alaska. So they're amazing animals. I would encourage you to learn more about them. I could do a whole talk on gray whales, but we'll continue on here. Because I am bringing this to you virtually, and I've been showing you a lot of videos, I still want you to experience what it's like to actually come out on a boat and go whale watching. So let's take a look.
Hi everybody, my name is Jessica. I work here for Davies Locker at Newport Landing Whale Watching in beautiful Newport Beach, California. I'm very excited to take you on the water today to see whales and dolphins, which we can see year-round right here. I grew up loving animals, and I went to college and studied biology so I could do something with animals when I got a career. I now work as a naturalist for the Whale Watching Company, which means that I specialize in educating folks about whales and dolphins. What I get to do every day is take students out on the water to see these animals in their natural habitat. I have the best job in the world. So let's go out on the boat today and see what we can find. Come on. We're now in the open ocean looking for wild whales and dolphins. We don't have any special way to find them, any GPS, sonar, or tracking devices on the animals. We actually use 3 S's to find whales: seabirds, spouts, and splashes. Splashes from birds or whales. These are all ways that make movement on the ocean that we can see using these, which are binoculars. These are a great tool to use while you're out at sea. This is the captain's wheelhouse. This is where the captains are driving the ship and helping to keep us safe while spotting wild animals. Today we're working with Captain Danny. She's going to help us spot some wildlife. What do we see today?
I think in front of us we have some dolphins.
Wow, that's so exciting. Let's check it out. These are common dolphin. We were able to spot them using our binoculars. Common dolphin are some of the smallest species that we see out here, and they are a type of toothed whale. They're really playful with the boat. That was a great look at some common dolphin. Now let's go look for a whale. Whoa, I think we see a gray whale. I think it's a gray whale because I see it has a gray color on its body, white speckles, yellow and orange whale lice and barnacles. It has a big heart-shaped glow, and it has no dorsal fin on its back. We're so lucky we found a gray whale because we only get to see them part of the year, from December through May. Gray whales go on one of the longest migrations of any mammal in the world, all the way from their feeding grounds in Alaska to their breeding grounds in Mexico. They are currently just passing through our area, and sometimes we see them very close to the beach. Gray whales can grow between 40 and 50 feet long and about the size of a school bus. They filter out food from the seafloor and feed on tiny crustaceans called amphipods, shrimp, and worms. We saw so many cool animals today, and throughout the year, we can see several species of whales, dolphins, and sea lions on our whale watching trips. Every single trip is different. You never know what you're going to see out here, and we really hope you can join us soon on the water so you can see whales and dolphins firsthand in the beautiful Pacific Ocean. Now, we're going to go head back into the virtual classroom and learn a little bit more about whales and dolphins. See you soon!
So amazing. I hope you guys enjoyed our little virtual simulated whale watching experience where we got to see dolphin and whales. So let's now check in with our partners over at Crystal Cove Conservancy. Caitlin is actually in Crystal Cove State Park, and she's going to teach you a little bit more about tide pools.
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin and I'm from Crystal Cove Conservancy. Crystal Cove Conservancy is the nonprofit partner of Crystal Cove State Park, located on the coast between Laguna Beach and Newport Beach in Orange County, California, on the traditional lands of the Ahashiman and Tongva tribal nations. The park contains 3.2 miles of coastline, as well as 2,400 acres of backcountry and about 1,000 acres, of course, of marine protected area that Jessica talked about earlier. Now that you've had the chance to meet some of the largest residents of our NPA out in the open water with Jessica, let's check out another awesome part of our NPA, the rocky intertidal or tide pools here behind me. Crystal Cove State Park's tide pools are protected by state law because they are located in a marine protected area. So under the regulations, all take is prohibited in tide pools. The tide pools are the most protected parts of the NPA because, as you can see, they are much closer to us, people. They can really be damaged by humans taking animals or trampling in them, so they're really important for us to protect by following tide pool rules. You can't remove any animals, rocks, or shells, and there are also other rules for being a good tide pooler, as you can see here, such as never picking up animals and please walk gently. So, what are tide pools? The tide is the height of the ocean at a particular location moving up and down due to the gravitational pull of the moon on Earth's oceans. So the tide goes in and out twice each day. So we have 2 high tides and 2 low tides where the water is really high or really far out. So when the tide is low, like it is right now, all of the organisms that were underwater are now either out in the open or in shallow pools of water. This is a harsh way to live, so these creatures have lots of adaptations to help them survive here. So what makes tide pool life so hard, and what adaptations do animals have to survive those conditions? The first thing you might notice that it's really dry up here, and we are not underwater. So how do these ocean animals survive out of the water for several hours a day? Let's explore today and check it out. One of the things that makes tide pool life so hard is living right where the crashing waves are. So animals need to be stuck really tight to the rocks so they don't get washed away. It's also good to be stuck tight to the rocks so that animals that are exposed when we're out here in the open can't eat them and pull them off the rocks. There's lots of animals that hold really fast to the rocks in the tide pools. Like behind me, these California mussels are stuck really tight to the rocks. So right now they're closed and tight and waiting for the tide to rise back up again. And when it does, they can open up and they're filter feeders so they can get all of their good food from the water without going anywhere. Another animal commonly found in the tide pools are hermit crabs. Unlike snails, hermit crabs don't have their own shell as part of their body. So what can they do for protection? They'll have to find shells to move into. They'll find discarded shells of snails to crawl into and make their own home. That's why it's so important to leave shells that you find at the beach. It could be a future hermit crab home. Another thing some animals will do to protect themselves against drying out in the sun is by choosing their location really carefully. So lots of animals like our anemones are stuck on the rocks, but some can move around. So let's actually check out an animal down here that has moved to a nice spot. Under this rock is an ochre sea star. And you may not see sea stars moving very often, but they can actually move around with tube feet that they have on the bottom of their body. And when the tide goes out and it gets really dry and sunny, they will crawl into a nice shaded crevice, just like this one here, and wait out until the water level comes back up again. So here's another animal that is very well protected against drying out here. You might almost not even tell that it's an animal. It kind of looks like just a little rock, but this is actually a limpet. They are basically a type of snail. So they have this shell over here, and underneath it, where we can't see because it's held tight to the rock, is their little foot, their body and their whole foot that's held really tight. So it might be hard to believe that these guys do move around, but I actually can tell that this owl limpet has been moving around because it's cleared off this area by eating all the little barnacles off of this rock. So when it's really dry out, he almost looks like a rock himself, very tight down on the rock. But when the water comes up, our owl limpet friend can cruise around and munch and eat all of these delicious barnacles. All right, so here we found a nudibranch. These are one of the only bright and colorful animals in our tide pools. Nudibranchs, like this Hopkins rose nudibranch, are a type of tiny sea slugs. And they're really brightly colored to actually warn predators that they taste bitter. So even though they are out and about and really flashy and obvious, their bright colors will tell animals not to eat them. Usually the only other animals that will eat nudibranchs is other kinds of nudibranchs. So another hazard of living in the tide pools is that animals can really dry out when they're out in the sun. And there's lots of different ways that animals will protect themselves against this. One of those strategies you can see really well with our anemone. So here we have one that's under the water and nice and wide open with its tentacles really visible so that it can grab any prey that attaches to them. And then when it's too sunny out or they're dry or they're out in the open, you'll see them closed up like this here. And what you may also notice is that they have little bits of shells and rocks all over the outside of their body, and they're using that kind of like a sunscreen. So this covered up layer, they can close in on itself and then they don't dry out in the sun. And then when they're underwater again and they're not in the sun anymore, they'll open back up so they can continue eating food. While the tide pools may seem like a really different ecosystem to the open ocean where all of those whales you learned about with Jessica are found, there are actually lots of tide pool species that are an important part of the food chain for whales in the open ocean. Many tide pool species spend part of their life as something called plankton. Plankton are any organisms that float in the water column and can't swim against a current. While the tide pool animals here are not floating in the ocean, at one point many of them were floating in the ocean as larvae. So plankton, including the larval forms of many tide pool animals like sea stars and hermit crabs, are food for lots of whale species in Crystal Cove. So the health of our local whales also depends on having healthy populations of animals in our tide pools. While you're at the tide pools looking for animals living there, don't forget to look up and out at the water. Some whales and dolphins, especially bottlenose dolphins and gray whales, like to travel and play very close to shore. So keep your binoculars handy and use some of the spotting skills that Jessica taught you to whale watch from shore. Thank you all so much for joining us out here in the tide pools in Crystal Cove State Park. If you ever come out to explore tide pools here or somewhere else, remember our good tide pooler rules. Walk gently and avoid stepping on any animals. Don't turn over rocks or pick up any animals, and definitely leave everything in the tide pools, including rocks, animals, and shells. So thank you again for meeting all the cool critters in the tide pool with us. Bye.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for teaching us more about the tide pool zones in Crystal Cove State Park. If you'd like to learn more about Crystal Cove Conservancy's educational programs, they have amazing virtual learning, online, and in-person education. If you head on over to crystalcove.org /education, you can learn a little bit more about what they do. Also, Newport Landing whale watching. Of course, we have whale watching field trips, and if you'd like to learn more about those, you can send me over an email, jessica@newportwhales.com, if you'd like to learn more. That being said, again, my name is Jessica. I am so happy to be here today with you all. What we're going to be doing now is bringing it back. We're going to do a live feed, and we are going to go myself and Holly are going to be answering your questions. This is a great time to send us your questions, see if we can answer anything that you want to know, everything between humpbacks to hermit crabs, and about some of our educational programs. Thank you so much for listening in. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Jessica. Thanks so much for joining us today to learn all about the wonderful animals of Newport Beach. Everything from humpback whales to hermit crabs. Again, my name is Jessica, and I'm a naturalist with Newport Landing Whale Watching in Newport Beach.
Hi, and I'm Holly. I'm the education manager for Crystal Cove Conservancy. We are the nonprofit partner of Crystal Cove State Park, and we'll be here answering any questions that you guys have. So if you have anything, please type them into chat and we're happy to answer. So let us know if there's anything else you want to know that you heard. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. So far, since there aren't any questions, I can start us off. First, I want to thank Jessica showing us all those amazing whale videos. They were so cool. I love them so much. And I really want to find out, Jess, what is your favorite whale? And also, what's your favorite time of year to go whale watching?
Oh, those are such great questions because I get those all the time from students on the boat. So it's so hard for me to pick my favorite whale because they're all amazing in their own unique way. I would have to say it's a tie between our gray whales and our blue whales. So right now, we're actually seeing heading up and down the coast is the gray whale. Magnificent animal, like you saw in the videos earlier today. Gray whales are one of the longest migrating mammals on the planet. They go from Alaska all the way down to Mexico and back. And I've actually had opportunities to see them in Alaska. I've had opportunities to see them here off of our coast and also in Baja, Mexico, where you can go down to the lagoons where they breed and actually reach out and touch the animals in those highly protected conservation lagoons that they will migrate to have their babies. So I've had very special bonds and connections with them in those ways. They're also very, very friendly animals. So, I mean, I think they're just the cutest little things. The other whales that are one of my favorites are the blue whales, which are the largest animal that's ever lived on planet Earth. Larger than any dinosaur, as you learned, larger than any megalodon. You could crawl around in the arteries on the heart of this blue whale. It's just amazing that something like this is still living in our oceans. And we're actually going to start to see blue whales as we get into the summer. So late spring into summer, sometimes all the way into early fall, we will see giant blue whales off the coast of Newport Beach regularly. So I would say for the best time to go whale watching, really Southern California has fantastic weather year round. So you really can't go wrong during the year anytime. You're going to see some types of whales migrating through the Newport Beach area. But honestly, summertime and late spring is really great because you can catch the gray whales coming through, and then you can also start to see our giant blue whales as we get into the summer when their food starts to move in. Krill starts to become something that we see often here off the coast of Newport. So speaking of favorite whales,
You know
Holly,
what?
did
I
you
have to
have
agree
a
with you.
favorite
I
whale?
think gray whales are my favorite. And for one of the same reasons as you, I've had the privilege of experiencing them down in Baja as well and being able to touch them, and it's amazing. But the other reason they're my favorite is because since I work right at the beach, so I get to whale watch from shore all the time. And the gray whales come so close to shore with their babies. So I love being able to see them even when I'm not on a boat. And my favorite time experiencing them is when I'm with students and we're doing programs on the beach, or even I've done it hiking the backcountry in Crystal Cove and being able to look out into the ocean and see them spouting out there. And it's so magical to be able to see them all the time. To be able to see them when they're migrating by
It
Crystal
really
Cove.
is
And,
amazing
makes me
that we
so
can
happy.
be here in Southern California and just really
Mhm.
find a high point on a bluff somewhere and see whales and dolphin too. Let's talk about the dolphin, which are here all the time. Like 9 out of 10 times you go on a boat, or even if you're kind of cruising along the beach on the coastline in the tide pools, checking out, like you
Mhm.
said, like Caitlin said, look out to sea and look for those dolphin because we do have a lot of inshore bottlenose dolphin cruising up and down the coast. So we're just Newport Beach in general is just this magnificent area because of this marine protected area too. Maybe we want to talk a little bit more about why that is important. I know we wanted to kind of discuss that a little bit today. It's like, Holly, we learned a little bit about the marine protected areas, but what are these benefits of having this area that's
Well,
protected
particularly in
along our
Crystal
coast?
Cove, I really love that we have a marine protected area there because it makes our tide pool so pristine. So like Caitlin said in the video, and I think you said in your talk as well, because it's a marine protected area, there's no taking those tide pools. So when you find a really nice low tide, you can go down and find so many animals and also so many cool shells. Since you can't take shells or rocks or anything, you can end up seeing beautiful abalone shells just walking around, and we get sea stars all around, all the fun little hermit crabs, which I know are so easy to see, but they're also so fun to watch and play. You can see them. Have you ever seen them, kind of fight for a shell or trade shells, which is so cool, which is why it's so important to leave all the shells there, because those hermit crabs really like to crawl around and find a new home when they start to grow up. So I think having that protected area makes our tide pools really, really, really pristine
It
and
does.
really
And
fun to visit.
when we talk about going on a boat, going out to the tide pools, sometimes for students in classrooms, that's not really going to be in their plan for this year. So I do know that you guys are offering virtual programs. Is that right?
Yeah, since we weren't able to run as many field trips this year, which was sad to not bring students down on the boat with you guys or down to Crystal Cove State Park to hike with us, we turned all our field trips into virtual experiences, which you can do anytime online. So I think we'll be able to put the link in the chat, but you can also just visit crystalcove.org and see all of our different offerings from great, third grade through high school. There's all sorts of different things you can learn about either our backcountry, the marine protected area, our tide pools. So that's really cool. And I
Yeah,
think you have some
absolutely.
available
It's
too, right?
definitely a lot of organizations are pivoting to doing digital learning, distance learning through virtual experiences. So what we've done as an education team, because we absolutely love and miss working with all the students, we can pop into your classroom virtually, just like you saw today, and give you this full experience live in the classroom with a Q&A. If that is something that is of interest to you, head on over to newportwhales.com, learn more about our field trip options, or you can email me directly. My email is jessica@newportwhales.com, and we can connect and get those started, because not only do we hope in the future that you guys are able to come out on the water experiencing these activities with your students, such an enriching time, but also we hope that you'll head over to the tide pools. But we are here virtually for you if you can't make it. So with that being said, we really appreciate you joining us today. We've loved talking to you about everything from humpback whales to hermit crabs.
No, thanks.
Holly, did you have
No,
any
thanks
last
so
minute
much for
things you want to
joining.
add?
Bye.
Okay, thank you guys.